Greetings. I'm Dr. Sharma Henderson, President of Carson Accountability and Transparency. Welcome to the Carson Observer Podcast, where we connect you with public pillars who shape our community and keep the city running, educate you about government and how it functions, and inform you about the happenings in Carson and how it impacts your daily life. Today, we are honored to have LA County's 2nd District Supervisor and Chair of the Board, Holly Mitchell, as our guest. Supervisor Mitchell was first elected to the 2nd District seat in 2020. Her win marked the first time that the LA County Board of Supervisors, one of the most powerful legislative groups in the country, was made up of all women. Prior to that, she served in the State Legislature as both an Assemblymember and Senator, where she has helped pass legislation to increase economic and racial equity, including the passage of the pivotal Crown Act, which was the first law of its kind ever in the nation, ending hair discrimination. Welcome, Supervisor Mitchell. We are honored to have you with us here today.
Oh, Dr. Henderson, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So we'll go ahead and get started with our questions. We wanted you to just tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and how did you make your way to sit on the Board of Supervisors?
I appreciate that. You know, I'm a 3rd-generation native Angelino, grew up in Leimert Park, Crenshaw. My mother remarried, so we moved to the Inland Empire my high school years, but, you know, LA is home. And I would take the then RTD every weekend to come back and stay with my grandma to be back in LA and take the bus to the Fox Hills Mall and hang out with my friends. So I'm Angelino through and through. And, you know, I had the privilege of my first kind of real job being working for then State Senator Diane Watson, who was an amazing first boss and amazing mentor, who really opened the door for me and allowed me to work on policy areas that interested me. And she just was the consummate mentor in that she pushed me and gave me opportunities. And so went to work for her right out of my Coral Foundation Fellowship at 22, went to Sacramento. So I was in the district office, I was in the Capitol office, personal staff, then I was committee staff. Left her office when term limits became law, and then began to work for a number of women's health advocacy organizations, from the California Elected Women's Association to the California Black Women's Health Project. Then I lobbied for the Western Center on Law and Poverty. My entire career, Dr. Henderson, is really focused on the same population of families, coming full circle to me becoming CEO of Crystal Stairs, working in a policy arena to develop the kinds of supports and services that families need to kind of keep it all together, to have access to healthcare services, to talk about disproportionate impacts our environment and access to healthcare services has on a Black woman's ability to live healthy and be well, to provide childcare services to hardly reached communities. And so I've served really the same population my entire career. Got mad sitting in a budget subcommittee hearing room one day, was there to advocate for childcare investments and to tell the legislature not to cut $1 billion out of subsidized childcare. And when I saw the action they took, I realized that I had the ordinary life experience and the applicable experience in terms of policy making and leading one of the largest child development agencies in the country to take that to Sacramento. And I got mad enough to run for the state assembly. And I ran in 2010 and ultimately had a wonderful 10-year experience serving in both the Assembly and Senate, working on areas around poverty disruption. Those are the policy areas that I had significant impact on as a leader in the Assembly and the Senate, and ultimately as chairwoman of the California State Senate Budget Committee, where I led the passage of several budgets, you know, equaling north of $200 billion, because California is the 5th largest economy in the world. So why LA County Board of Supervisors? It's arguably one of the most powerfully elected bodies in the country. Each district represents north of 2 million people. The county, as the safety net level of government, operates the kinds of programs that took me to Sacramento in the first place, that I've worked for and around my entire career. And at a time such as this, in the middle of a public health and economic crisis, really knowing that we need leaders with a proven track record on doing this work. And so against great odds, I threw my hat in the ring, continued to talk to and work with community, and the community showed up for me election day. And I need the community to know that I show up for you every day. It has been a whirlwind of a year and a couple of months in terms of learning the interactions of the county, building one of the most amazing teams I've ever had the privilege of leading, who our team mentioned, my staff, a dynamic group of people who share my why we choose to be servant leaders, why we choose to be public servants, and bringing forth policies and actions that I think the second district residents would be proud of, and I believe they deserve and are entitled to. That's how I got to the LA County Board of Supervisors.
That's awesome. I'm so impressed by the fact that you come from a nonprofit background. That's where my career has been couched. And that's where I first became aware of you through the California Association of Nonprofits. And I was really touched by your empowerment then, saying that nonprofit leaders are really doing good work in the communities. And you see that translated in your work with the legislature. So that's an awesome thing, and something for people who are in the nonprofit sector to consider as they do their service, that they too can elevate to that level. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, the reality is the nonprofit sector is one of the leading economic drivers. People talk about small businesses. I tend to use the term small employers because the nonprofit sector, faith-based organizations, are employers and small businesses and are a viable, critical element to the economic health of LA County. And so I always would frame the work I did at Crystal Stairs, while it was mission-driven. People think nonprofit. Yeah, but I made significant payroll. I facilitated contracts. I negotiated benefits. I was an employer. And those are many of the skills I brought to my life now as a policymaker and an elected official.
Awesome. So let's dig in a little deeper into the role. Like if a constituent were to ask you, so what do you do as a supervisor? What makes you different than any of the other political positions that are out there? And what specifically do you see as your role?
I'm so glad you asked the question, because the county level of government is probably the biggest secret in this region. But the reality is, it occurred to me, and I would say it on the campaign trail, quite frankly, in 2020, because that was a presidential election year. And all of our attention, quite frankly, focuses on the federal level of government, Congress and the White House. And that's important, and it should. But I would tell people, it's local level of government that probably has a more direct impact on your lives each and every day, quite frankly, than the decisions that we tend to focus on at the federal level. With the exception of the fact that the president gets to appoint Supreme Court justices. That's a very big deal. We make decisions at the local level of government around zoning. I sit on the sanitation board. I sit on the metro board. I just finished moments ago my LAFCO, the organization that makes annexing decisions and decisions about, regions and whether we call ourselves a city or not. I mean, these are levels of government that are not sexy, that are not apparent to the average resident, but have direct impact on your life every day. The Department of Public Works, as Carson residents quickly began to understand late last fall into the new year, LA County Department of Public Works is a lifeline, is what keeps the Dominguez Channel, the elements that we're responsible for, going. It's the department that responded when we had the horrible raw sewage leak New Year's Day. Those are governmental entities, Dr. Henderson, I think we don't think about. We turn on water, we assume it's going to be appropriate temperature and safe. Mm-hmm. We take our trash out to the curb and don't think, quite frankly, beyond hearing the trash trucks come and take it. But those are critical elements of government that keep us healthy and our ability to survive. So the county level is where CalWorks is housed, probation, county parks and rec, housing. On the entertainment side, the Hollywood Bowl, the LA County Museum of Art, the Natural History Museum, the sheriff is at the county level, the district attorney, the public defender, Department of Mental Health, LA County Public Health, community health clinics, public hospitals, the county library. Off the top of my head, there are 34, 35 departments at the county level, but those are the departments that I think resonate with all of us, because those are the departments that we think of, we encounter on a regular basis. Department of Child and Family Services, DCFS. The county is also a major employer. My parents met as eligibility workers working for DPSS. The county is an employer, one of the largest in the region, 112,000 people work for the county, from the sheriff to county fire, to all the departments I just mentioned. So that's the county level of government. And I think it has direct impact on our lives every day. People, some instances, just don't recognize it.
Oh, that's awesome. And you're right. When people think about government, they're either looking at the federal level, they'll look at the local level, meaning city level. And, the state level has its impact, but county really does get lost in the midst of that, especially if you're living in a city municipality.
Right.
Right. So it's interesting to hear you name all of those departments that we interface with regularly, but we don't think about what entity oversees or has oversight for those different departments. So thank you for that.
And for the 125 unincorporated communities of LA County, we are their local level of government. So they look to us for fire, policing, local zoning requirements. And so if you live in unincorporated LA, we are your, in effect, local level of government. 88 cities, 125 unincorporated communities constitutes LA County.
Wow. And so here you are serving as the board chair. Congratulations, by the way. So what does that mean?
Thank you, I think.
So speaking of, I think, what does that mean? So what does it mean to be the board chair? What does that do to your role, or how does it affect your role as a supervisor?
So, it's more work. I'm perceived as the leader or the face and the voice of the board. It gives me appointing authority. I appoint the other members to all of these external kind of commissions and task forces we serve on, the LA Care Board, the sanitation boards, and there are dozens of them. All of these boards that the members of the board serve on. I run the meeting. So if you tune in on Tuesdays at 9:30, you will see me chairing and running the meeting. And so it's like being the chair of any other organization or elected body. I am the representative when one is called on to kind of be the face or voice of the Board of Supervisors. That's me. The chairwomanship rotates based on the district number. So when I was first elected last year, I came in as the pro tem, which is equal to vice chair. And then I automatically rolled into my chairwomanship role this past December.
Nice. So if you have a typical day, what would that look like? It's like a loaded question. So what are some key things that you have happening on a regular basis throughout your day?
So, what I have always loved about this work is there is no typical day. When I was in Sacramento, I would have students and interns want to shadow me. And I'm like, okay, wear your walking shoes. Because if it was a committee day, you'd see me running from one committee hearing to the next. And so COVID means a lot of screen time, right? But yesterday was Tuesday, so that was board day, and we have closed session every other Tuesday. So I gavelled down at 9:30. Closed session ran from 9:30 till about 1 or so. Can't talk about what happens in closed session. But today I started my day at 7:30 this morning on a conference call at 7:30. Another one at 8:15. Had a call with the mayor and Dr. Ferrer, a standing call at 8:30 a.m. on 8:30 a.m. on Wednesdays to kind of talk about health orders, where the county and the city is around responding to this public health crisis. I moved into my LAFCO meeting at 9, adjourned 10 minutes ago. I'm here with you at 10. At 11:15, I'm going to present to the Aspen Institute, the Ascend Conference, where we're going to talk about the future of young parent families in LA County. That's 11:15 to 11:45. At noon, I present to an interesting group, the Civic Alliance, a group of private sector philanthropic leaders who want to hear my perspective for an hour about the needs of LA County and how they can contribute and support that. At 1:30, are you tired yet? At 1, and then I go to the sanitation district. I am a member of sanitation districts 1, 2, 3, 8, 19, and Santa Clarita Valley. So there's a whole packet and agenda where I'll be hearing and making decisions and voting on issues confronting the sanitation district. And maybe then I'll stop for 20 minutes to eat some lunch and have some more meetings throughout the course of my day. That's a day.
Wow.
Happy day in the life of a member of the LA County Board of Supervisors.
Wow.
No 2 days are ever the same. I've picked up, as a result of redistricting, additional municipalities that I now represent. So I'm spending a lot of time with the mayors and city council and civic and community leaders and business leaders in these new beach cities, from LAX to El Segundo to Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach, all those municipalities. So those are new relationships and new areas that my staff and I are stepping into. The Marina Del Rey, all the Marina Del Rey land is owned by the county. So all the complicated issues around multi-levels of government, learning that for myself. I learn new things every day. No 2 days are ever the same.
Wow. I used to work out of the Westchester area and served on the board for the LAX Coastal Chamber of Commerce. I'm very familiar with a lot of those issues affecting the marina. So you have your hands very full, and there are some colorful entities in that community that I'm sure are gonna.
Well, you know what, Dr. Henderson, let's just keep it real. There are colorful entities in every community across LA County.
That's true.
Which is what makes the 2nd District so exciting.
Yeah.
And fun. You know, my chief of staff and I tease each other. We wake up, roll up our sleeves and say, okay, what kind of good trouble can we get into today? But what I love about it is, as you say, colorful entities, those are engaged people who want the best for their community. And wherever you live in the 2nd District, everybody really wants the same thing, Dr. Henderson. We want park space, we want tree canopy, we want communities that are safe and desirable and affordable to live in. Everybody wants great schools for their kids. You know, I want an LA County that my son can prosper as a young adult and raise his family, and I can grow old with dignity. And so every corner of LA County and every corner of my district, people want those same fundamental things. And I'm interested as an agent of government to figure out what we can do to facilitate that for them.
That's powerful. And I hope that we can absorb some of that sentiment throughout each of these different communities to know that we are really all looking and seeking the same things for each other and for ourselves. And if we remember that, then we'll get a whole lot further than we've ever been. So that's a very refreshing message to have.
I wonderful. I was on a podcast yesterday with Courage California with a young Latino brother who's an organizer, Pablo Rodriguez. He's an organizer in the Central Valley. And he said, equity is finishing unfinished neighborhoods. I thought that was so powerful. And when we go to communities and say, as opposed to us versus them, and people have the perception of, you know, if we give something to somebody else, what am I going to lose? But to think of it in the concept of unfinished neighborhoods, and what must we pour into unfinished neighborhoods to make them whole as well. I loved that. And I told him I'm going to be quoting you regularly because it's a wonderful concept that I think everybody can embrace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing. I think once people recognize that we want to have the same things and embrace that concept of wanting the same things for everybody across the board, then that will create unity. And that is a wonderful quote and a wonderful perspective. So speaking of such and having these kinds of conversations, so if someone wanted to be able to get a hold of you or share their ideas or reach out to you, how would they do that?
Go to the website. We have staff that spend a great deal of time updating the website so it's dynamic, it's fresh, and it has new information. Mitchell.lacounty.gov. Mitchell.lacounty.gov. When you go to the website, you click on the staff page. It was important to me that we publish pictures and the names of our staff and the geographic areas or the policy areas they cover. So if you scan that list, you'll know, oh, Carson, who are the constituent services reps who serve Carson? You can find out who to plug into and how to reach them with phone numbers and email addresses. Constituent services is very important to me. I came from the Diane Watson School of Constituent Services is why we're elected, and constituent services is what gets you reelected. Because if people have a negative experience, we called her, she didn't return the call ever, they'll remember that, and I get that. And so my team shares my why about why we're here and why we do the work we do. And so they're incredibly responsive. Now, people like to, Dr. Henderson, like hit me up on Facebook Messenger with, long memos about, and I need a stop sign on this corner. That's not the best way to reach me. Mm-hmm. Go to the website, call staff, because you can't count on the frequency with which I'm gonna check Facebook Messenger based on that schedule I just shared with you. So I'm like, use the public domain, use the public website. There are all kinds of ways you can email if you want to schedule me to be someplace. There's a scheduling form. We've made that website as easy to navigate as possible so people know how to reach us.
Great. So you mentioned stop signs. What are other things that people reach out to you for? What services would they actually be able to have met by your office?
Well, like the stop signs and speed bumps in unincorporated communities. My staff was able to come up with a creative solution for an area in Ladera in my community where they were having, the donuts on Sundays, residential community. And so they were able to come up with some signs and not speed bumps because those take years to make happen. But there's some new directional signs and these kind of temporary stanchions that you'll see in the middle of streets, just enough to be a distraction. So those are important things. I'm on the Metro board and we do a lot of communication. I am clear, particularly through this public health pandemic, about the importance of mobility equity. Because when our essential workers who rely on public transportation needed to get to work, they were met with reduced bus service. And while trains are important, we're trying to get that Crenshaw line open and to make the connector to the airport. That's very important for my district. Bus service is what people rely on most frequently. So if you watch me on the Metro board, you will see me leaning in terms of bringing bus service back up to 100%, hiring new bus drivers, providing protections for bus drivers, having this very timely, important conversation about what public safety looks like in public transit. Because there are segments of our community who say it's not more tickets, it's not fare evasion, and it's not more police who disproportionately write tickets for Black people, against Black people. So those are kind of issues that we hear from people consistently.
So you mentioned the pandemic. What are efforts that your office or the county as a whole are taking to make sure that residents continue to get access to masks, testing, vaccines, boosters, financial assistance? What's happening with that?
I'm glad you asked. And that has been the thrust and focus of my work. We were able to insist and push the public health department. And I have a real partner in Dr. Barbara Ferrer, let me say that, and the people who work for LA County Department of Public Health and Healthcare Services. And we pushed to make sure that access wouldn't be a barrier for people not getting what they needed. And so there are hundreds of community-based partnerships between faith-based organizations, community clinics, nonprofit organizations who have partnered with public health, and where you can get testing, where you can get the vaccine. You know, St. John's Community Health Centers did a yeoman's job early on in waving the red flag for South LA and the region. We partnered with the city of Carson and made sure that vaccinations and testing were available in Victoria Park and other places. So we did all we could to make sure that was available. Continuing to pass health orders in the best interests of our community. You know, the 2nd Supervisorial District is the district with the highest COVID positive testing, the lowest vaccination rate. And so many of our communities, you know, continue to live in healthcare deserts. And so elevating those issues in a meaningful way, powerful article 2 days ago in LA Times with quotes from Dr. Elaine Batchelor, the CEO of Martin Luther King Community Hospital, about, you know, now that we're coming through the pandemic, let's not lose sight of the lack of access to preventive healthcare services in our community. And I don't intend to take my foot off that pedal to continue to push and talk about that. We're in the process of a major rebuild and rebrand of Harbor UCLA and these restorative care villages where we are funding mental health treatment beds and true restorative care villages where we meet people where they are and provide those critical healthcare services. So we're continuing to do that. On the economic side, you know, we launched and used some of our federal American Rescue Plan dollars, and ARPA is the acronym we use, to create supports for small businesses who needed rent relief too. We put forth the eviction moratorium to help residential tenants, but we rolled out this plan for unincorporated LA County small businesses to get rent relief too. And you can get up to a $40,000 grant if you owe back rent in your commercial tenant lease. We are investing these ARPA dollars with an equity lens, and I have authored multiple motions because the point from my perspective was we're not going to just divide these federal dollars by 5 equally, because all 5 districts, quite frankly, weren't equally impacted. Now, of course, LA County as a whole suffered, but as I said, the 2nd district bore the brunt. And so we're investing these dollars with that lens. And so we're investing in workforce development. The childcare industry took a huge hit. That's an industry that's one of the 3rd largest industry in LA County. And we know you can't go back to work if your childcare center is closed or your family daycare provider never reopened, or that they continue to provide services during the pandemic, but had extra expenses because they had to buy more bleach and wipes and make a safe, clean environment for your children. And so we're investing in LA County's early care and education infrastructure in a significant way. We are working to close the digital divide in a meaningful way because we know far too many households struggled for their kids to be online for school and for mom and dad to be online. You know, nobody had an internet signal that worked 100% of the time strong. Nobody. And so to really figure out how we can make the internet affordable, that's the issue for LA County. When we talk about digital divide, I used to still think the old days where people didn't have access to cabling. That's not the case. 70% of the people in the Florence Firestone community of my district didn't have it because they couldn't afford the products available in the market. So what do we do to acknowledge the fact that the internet is the equivalent of a public utility? It is as important to our survival as gas, electric, and water. That's just the reality. And so we need to treat it as such and make sure that everybody has access. So those are some of the aha moments and takeaways. We've had a really once in a generational opportunity with the amount of federal and state funds that are available to us. Most of my political career We've had the great ideas and the research to show us what to do. We oftentimes didn't have the money to deliver. Now we have the money and resources. So I'm doing all I can to get the money out the door into communities as quickly as possible to make a difference. Lastly, I'll say something I'm very proud of. We're using these dollars and this opportunity to launch the largest guaranteed basic income pilot project in the country. To look at the research from the Stockton experience, from the city of Compton experience, former Mayor Brown and former Mayor Tubbs both launched these programs in their municipalities, and we're partnering with the research institutions that supported them. And it'll launch March 31st. It's Breathe LA County, because the whole point is if you are living on a financial cliff month after month, you just need a little room to breathe. Mm-hmm. This will be $1,000 a month to 1,000 households for 3 years.
Wow.
And when I look at the research from Compton and Stockton and see what people were able to do with their investments, it allowed them to get tutors for the kids. It allowed them to fix the alternator in the car that's been on blocks in the yard so they could get a job that may have been a little further from home, but pays them more. Mm-hmm. It allowed mothers to stop piecemealing work with 2 and 3 part-time jobs because she could get the alternator fixed and get 1 full-time job, which allowed her to be at home with her kids in the evening for homework help, right? Mm-hmm. Allowed some families to start saving for home ownership. That's really important. It allowed a bunch of people to start micro businesses. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited. This isn't a new concept. It was a part of Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign concept 60 years ago. And so for me, it is a way that we can decriminalize the notion of poverty and recognize with a guaranteed basic income, it gives people room to breathe and do what they need to do for their families and their communities. I'm excited about that.
That's amazing. I'm excited too. I know I've heard about those programs coming to fruition in other places. So it's really awesome to know that it's going to be coming to LA County, and I will be watching those results. And I'm sure it's going to make an amazing and impressive impact on those families. And I want to take a note for our viewers to think about what it means to have districted representation. I loved how you spoke about the allocation of resources, speaking up for the 2nd district, saying, wait a minute, each district was not affected proportionately. So to distribute funds proportionately makes no sense. Zero. And that's where equity comes into play. It's not about giving someone more than their share. It's giving them their appropriate share based on their experiences and their positioning and the impact that they're experiencing with these different things, such as the pandemic. So I applaud you for taking that stance and for speaking up for the district. I grew up in the jungles, so that's where my background is. So I am an Angelino by birth, and spent a lot of time in those different areas of Los Angeles and in some incorporated areas. So I am excited about these things that I'm hearing about. So we wanted to ask specifically, speaking about impacts, about the Dominguez Channel. So as you're very well aware of, we dealt with the lingering odor, and I was relocated for 41 days about, as a result of that. So I'm specifically one of the folks that was impacted by that. So what are the efforts that the county took? And are there any other services being provided to address the lingering results of that particular issue?
So the county is still very much involved. My staff and I get updates from Mark Pastrella, who became the one county department head that we locked arms and jumped together head first in bringing county resources to the forefront. We were had standing calls daily, 7 days a week with Mr. Pastrella and his team. And I have to say, as a new member of the county family, I was really impressed. He stood and delivered. And when I said, yeah, you're going right, I think we should go left, he and his team responded. I said, let's go to the site, have a press conference so people see us. He brought that mobile unit that stayed on site for weeks and weeks. People have a visual place of, oh, I go there for help. That was very important to me. And he and I stood side by side and continue to. The price tag is still clicking in terms of what the county has paid out for the relocations, for the air purifiers that went out in the thousands probably. And so it's a running tally that he keeps me apprised of. But you should know that, the county is suing 10 of the defendants connected to the warehouse fire. We ultimately determined after weeks and weeks of testing and investigation, what caused it. And we know that it was the fire at a site that had been fined and sanctioned for inappropriate work practices. They were not storing those products safely and had been fined, and the county and everybody was going through the process to hold them accountable. The fire happened, and that spillage into the channel is what caused the chemical reaction that led to the smell. Took us a while to connect all those dots and figure it out. But when we did, we got clear. And we are seeking to recover cleanup costs totaling north of $150 million. And that price tag may increase.
Wow.
And so I think that that's the right thing for the county to do, to hold those 10 defendants connected to the warehouse accountable for the harm they caused. And as Mark said in the LA Times, it was a great article, March 8th. The title of the article was "A Poisonous Legacy of Racism and Pollution Still Haunts This LA Area Flood Channel." He sees the lawsuit as an opportunity to daylight racial inequities and the actions of the people responsible. And I couldn't agree with him more. So we will continue to push. Then as we're in the middle of that, then the sewage spillage, New Year's Day. And again, through the sanitation districts that I serve on, as well as Mark, I was deeply appreciative of the immediacy of the response, just like with the other event. And the fact that people were there, contractors were brought in, they did whatever they needed to do to handle that situation quickly, from the cleanup on a couple of those blocks that literally had raw sewage going down their streets, everything from sanitizing their lawns, the underbelly of their cars, all of that, to fixing this huge hole in this huge sewage pipeline. A pipeline that had just passed inspection weeks before. But not only did they repair that, they're now looking at the whole pipeline and have prioritized 4 other areas of potential weakness. And so these are the kinds of projects that are infrastructure projects that we're using federal dollars to focus on, again, with a lens of equity, looking at geographic areas that have perhaps not been served on par with other areas. That is the focus, and we're getting the work done.
Wow. Well, thank you for those efforts. I mentioned I benefited from being relocated because it was difficult being here, and I still have my air purifier rolling as we speak. So we're definitely appreciative of your efforts. And I will definitely say that it was helpful to have the mobile unit and to have those staff on hand, and at both at the community center, and then there were units that were at Victoria Park and the phone line. So all of those services were very, very helpful, and the staff handled things very well. I know that I got all of my questions answered. Even if they didn't have the answers, they would call me right back. So definitely want to applaud you and your team for the way that you guys handled everything.
I appreciate that. And, and people, particularly now, given the climate in which we live, people love to say, I don't trust government. People are quick to jump on me and government if it's not happening quick. That was a disaster of unprecedented magnitude. And we were on the spot, on site, figuring it out in real time. And I think it's important for people to recognize. So I got the complaints. I saw the media coverage of, they not doing nothing, And, that's just not true. Did we know what caused it day one? No. And I was the first one to say, We've been told by public health that it's not dangerous to your health based on the chemical. I believe that, and I shared information in real time as it became available. We still know that while the smell of the chemical was horrific, stomach turning bad, and you shouldn't have to try to live and work there, we also know that the kind of chemical it was doesn't have long-term health effects. And so, I stood by that, I stand by that, and yet we still did all of our work as quickly as we could to provide people relief. So can government turn on a dime sometimes? No. Does it take leaders to say, work faster, work harder, show up, be there, answer the questions? Yes. Did some people, the mayor would call me. The mayor and I became very close, but she'd call me at 6 a.m. I called 211, they didn't have the answers. I'm calling the people at 211, get people on the phone who have the answers. So it's not going to be perfect. If anybody thinks they can run for office and they're going to be better than anybody else, I welcome you to put your name on a ballot and run, and let's see. But the reality is, we told the truth. We were there. We showed up. We partnered with the local level of government, stood arm in arm, and did all we could to get answers to people. And I'm proud of that work, and I will stand by it every day.
Well, thank you. I think it's important for people to understand that our elected officials are people. And, like you said, a lot of things happening in real time. It was a very difficult situation for everyone.
Horrific.
Yeah. So it was, and the information coming from different places and things like that did not help, because you had official communications and a bunch of everything else, right? And as you said, it was a stomach turning smell, and that alone was so disruptive for everyone that added a level of intensity to everyone's attitude, I think, about the situation. But in the end, ultimately, a lot of good services were provided. And my hope and prayer is that moving forward, things will be put in place to prevent those types of scenarios from taking place. And that'll be a blessing for everyone.
And, the Dominguez Channel is a fascinating example of when you have major infrastructure that is not one level of government. I learned quick. I had a quick study on the Dominguez Channel that the walls of the channel are maintained by the county. The floor of the channel is maintained by the federal government. So, while members of Congress were pointing the finger, I'm pointing it back saying, we're going to do our part. I need you to bring the EPA in to talk about how we flush the floor of the channel. None of us can do anything about Mother Nature not having rain. So she's going to do what she's going to do. But we have to figure out what we can do. These multiple levels of government across jurisdictions. A piece of it is in the city of Carson. Pieces of the channel are not. How we pull all those people together to come up with a solution. That's the intricacies of government that go on behind the scenes, whether people are aware or not. And we're continuing that work and continuing that dialogue to make sure that the EPA is going to come in and do their part.
Well, even the nuances of sourcing oxygen during COVID, right? Who would think that you would ever have a time where you would need to have a concentrated amount of that substance of oxygen to pour into the channel when you're having oxygen being deployed all over the states to deal with people dealing with COVID. So, I mean, it was a perfect storm, so to speak.
It was a perfect storm. It was a perfect storm. You're absolutely right.
Thank you so much for your candor on that.
That is the function and role of government, to stand in the gap.
Yes.
During good times and perfect storms.
Yes. And I appreciate your candor on how you dealt with it and all the different issues going on behind the scenes. I think that's important for our residents to understand that it was simply a very difficult situation, but, we made through it. The outfall for legally will be what it will be, but in the end, we'll all be better for it, because that channel is going to get the attention that it needs and the cleanup that it needs. And that's going to be a good thing for Carson and for our neighbors. So are there any other things that you wanted to talk to us about? Any news or updates that you think Carson residents should know? What is it that you want the city of Carson to know about who you are and what you do and can do for us?
Well, I appreciate this opportunity. And really, when I became aware of the Carson Accountability and Transparency Organization, was, as I've shared with you in the past, very impressed with the work you do in terms of keeping your residents informed and engaged. So let me tip my hat to you all, and thank you for inviting me on the podcast. One specific project I think Carson residents should know is to really highlight the work our constituent services team, along with County Parks and Recs, are doing with regard to the South Parcel development and input into the development of the North Parcel at Victoria Park. You all know the history of Victoria Park, and we are engaging community directly to brainstorm and think about what you want in your community. I think that's a very important element of any new development ideas. Will the ultimate development be exactly what everybody that was polled or engaged think? Maybe not, but absolutely want folks engaged to help us think about and steer the project in a direction that the community finds of value. So February 17th was the last hosted session. The sessions have gone very well. People appreciate being seen and heard. And I think that is relevant to everybody. Wants to, know that their voice matters. And I think that we've been successful in letting Carson residents know that. And I'm excited about what will come. So I hope that you will invite me back to a future podcast once we get clear about what those plans will look like, so we can talk about it. We will continue to work collaboratively with my sister mayor and the council members and the greater Carson community to figure out what role the county can do in partnership to bring ideas, effort, attention, resources to the table when appropriate to make Carson, to ensure that Carson will continue to be the jewel of the South Bay. Don't tell my other South Bay cities I said our secret.
Well, we thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity to chat with you. Again, I appreciate your legacy, your energy, your candor, and the way in which you've stepped up for our district. It's been awesome to watch you do the things that you've been doing on our behalf. And again, thank you for all of the generous compliments that you've given us for Carson Accountability and Transparency. As you know, we are looking to stand in the gap for our residents to keep them informed and engaged so that we can be a better community together. So it's always a pleasure and an honor to be able to have you in our presence, and we thank you so much for your time.
Dr. Henderson, it was my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity. Be well.
Thank you. So for our listeners, the Carson Observer podcast, connecting, educating, and informing the residents and the stakeholders of the city of Carson to take care and be on the lookout for future episodes. Be blessed.